We see this this covenant with death, this agreement with hell. We see those words of Isaiah really echoed into the past, all the way back to Abraham's covenant with the Almighty, and Israel's commandment not to enter into covenants with those people. And you know, this was one of the big things that happened in my life. It was now well over 40 years ago, began working on the chronological Gospels, and in that was the biblical calendar, which you have to understand that very thing first. But it was in 1993 when Israel entered into the Oslo Peace Accord that every bit of that was echoed in Isaiah's prophecy. But it may not have been the final fulfillment, but we saw everything about that. Israel's leaders doing wickedly against the covenant. They make an agreement with hell, a covenant with death, and in that they promised that they would give over land for the promise of peace, which is, and the Almighty said, I will annul your covenant with death. Well, that happened to be, by their own terminology, there's a sign in the White House lawn, a 7-year agreement. And so the Almighty is saying that he would annul their covenant with death. That's why in the spring of the year 2000, the spring of the year 2000, I said, if we've accurately corrected the calendar this year for the Aviv, we will see violence erupt in Jerusalem before sundown, September 28th. Now, I said that not because there was any revelation, it's simply this covenant with death fit this so precisely that if the Almighty is going to annul this covenant with death, and he's going to do it by violence, it has to be done before sundown, September 28th, because that is exactly 7 years. From Yom Teruah to Yom Teruah is exactly 7 years. It would have to happen before sunset. That was the day Ariel Sharon that morning went up on the Temple Mount, opened the book of Ezekiel from his wife's Bible, who was a Messianic Jew that passed away. He read that, and that's when the second intifada began, right then. That ancient prophecy being fulfilled today. And that's why I say Bible prophecy is being fulfilled today. But it may not be the final fulfillment of that. Right. Because we saw, you know, from there, they had another agreement that was at Camp David that summer. 7 years later, is again a 7-year agreement. And so people are again looking at, is this the prophecy of Daniel? Yep. And then 7 years later, it was Camp David. 7 years later, it was Annapolis. 3 times 7, you know, right down the line. And each one of these things, Joel, it looks like we are being told by heaven, look up. Look up. I am active. I'm doing things. I'm fulfilling my word. I'm giving you advanced warning, because this thing is going to get really rough.